Very good morning, students. I welcome you all smart students for this smart class program. So in the part 1 of this lesson, international economics, we have seen various concepts, various theories, and now in part 2 we'll be seeing the remaining part of the lesson. International economics. Next topic, balance of trade versus balance of payments. So we'll see what do you mean by balance of trade and what do you mean by balance of payment. And these two concepts, balance of trade and balance of payment, are important in the subject of international trade. Balance of trade, BOT. BOT refers to, balance of trade refers to the total value of a country's export of commodities and total value of imports of the commodities. So balance of trade, it means the total value of a country's export to the total value of country's import. Only export and import of commodities are included in the statement of balance of trade. So nothing else is included in the balance of trade except the export and import of a country. Movement of goods, export and import of commodities is called as a movement of goods, or also known as visible trade. Visible. Why you are calling it as a visible trade? Because the movement of commodities between countries can be seen by eyes. The goods are moving from one place to another, that you can see by your eyes, and you can touch and see the product, that is you have felt by hands, and can be verified physically by custom authorities of a country. So that is why it is called as a visible trade. So balance of trade refers to value of country's export and the value of country's import. So only these two terms are included in the balance of trade, export and import of a country. This is also called as a visible trade because you can feel by your hands and you can see by your eyes. So this balance of trade is of two types, favorable balance of trade and unfavorable balance of trade. When can you say that trade is a favorable? When the total value of commodity export of a country exceeds the total value of commodity import of the country, it is said that the country has a favorable balance of a trade. For example, any country if you take, that country's export should be more than that country's import, then we can say that country has a favorable balance of trade. That is, you are exporting more but you are importing less. You will be gaining more, that particular country will be gaining more. So we can tell that that country has a favorable balance of trade. Next one, unfavorable balance of trade. If the total value of commodity export of a country is less than that of the total value of a commodity import of that country is said to have an unfavorable balance of trade. Any country, if it is exporting less and importing more, that country has a unfavorable balance of trade. I hope you understood both the balance of trade, favorable and unfavorable. In favorable, country's export should be more than the import. In unfavorable, country's export will be less than that of the import. Next concept, balance of payment. Previously we have seen what do you mean by balance of trade. Now let us see what do you mean by balance of payments. Balance of payment is a systematic record of a country's economic and financial transaction with the rest of the world over a period of time, maybe 1 year. So it is a systematic record, maintaining a record. What for? One country's economic and financial transactions. What are the transactions you have done with the rest of the world countries over a given period of time. That is called as a balance of payment. When a payment is received from a foreign country, it is a credit transaction, while a payment to a foreign country is a debit transaction. Transactions are of two types, credit transaction and the debit transaction. When a payment you are receiving from a foreign country, it is a credit to us, it is called a credit transaction. If you make a payment to a foreign country, it is a debit transaction. Let us see what are all the items included on the credit side. When will you get the credit transaction? When export of goods and services, if you made to other countries, transfer receipts in the form of a gift, etc. from foreigners, borrowing from abroad, foreign investment, official sale of reserve asset. Official sale of reserve asset, then you will be getting a credit transaction. Now see the principal items on the debit side. When you have to make a payment to the other countries. Import of goods and services. When you import goods and services from other country. Transfer payment to foreigners. Lending to foreign countries. Investments by residents in foreign countries. Official purchase of reserve asset or gold from foreign countries and international agencies. If you do any of these activities, then you have to make a payment to the other foreign countries. This is called as a debit transaction. Components of BOP, that is balance of payment. So these components are divided into three categories: current account, capital account, official reserve asset account. Let us see now all these accounts in detail. First one, current account. This current account includes all international trade transaction of goods and services, international service transaction, and international unilateral transfers, that is nothing but gifts and the foreign aid. So current account includes all international trade transaction of goods and services, international service transaction, and international unilateral transfers, that is gifts under foreign aid. Next is the capital account. So this capital account, it consists of financial transaction of direct investment and purchases of interest bearing financial instruments, non-interest bearing demand deposits, and gold fall under the capital account. So this one includes direct investment, purchases of interest bearing financial instrument, non-interest bearing demand deposit, and gold fall. Next, the official reserve asset account. Official reserve transaction consists of movements of international reserves by governments and official agencies to accommodate, that is to fill in the imbalances which is arising from the current account and the capital account. So official reserve transaction consists of movements of international reserves by governments and official agencies to accommodate the imbalances arising in both the account, that is current account and the capital account. The official reserve asset of a country includes what? Gold stock, holding of its convertible foreign currencies, and special drawing right SDR, and its net position in the International Monetary Fund. So official reserve asset of a country, it includes gold stock, foreign currency, SDR, and its net position in the International Monetary Fund. Balance of payments disequilibrium. So this balance of payment can be classified as balanced, favorable and unfavorable. When can you say that balance of payment is balanced? The BOP is said to be balanced when the receipt R and payment P are just equal. That is, the income and the expenditure both are equal, then it is balanced. Receipt R and payment P should be equal. When it is favorable? When receipt exceeds payment, that is, when the receipt is more, income is more than the payment, than the expenditure, then the BOP is said to be favorable. Receipt should be more. Unfavorable, when receipts are less than the payment, when the income is less than the expenditure, that is, when the R is less than the payment, then it is said to be unfavorable or adverse balance of payment. See the picture, balance of payment disequilibrium. When it occurs? It occurs when demand is not equal to supply. Next, when the debit is more than the credit, then it leads to deficit. When these two conditions arises, then the balance of payment will be in a disequilibrium condition. Types of BOP disequilibrium. There are three main types of balance of payment disequilibrium: cyclical disequilibrium, secular disequilibrium, structural disequilibrium. Let us see one by one. First disequilibrium, cyclical disequilibrium. Why the cyclical disequilibrium arises? So this disequilibrium occurs because of two reasons. First reason is, two countries may be passing through different phases of business cycle. What are those phases of business cycle? Boom, recession, depression and recovery. Second, the elasticities of demand may differ between countries. Elasticities of demand may not be the same in all the countries. It may differ from country to country. The product for which one country has got the more elasticity of demand may not be the same in the other country. Because of these two reasons, cyclical disequilibrium takes place. Next, secular disequilibrium. The secular or long run disequilibrium occurs because of long run and deep seated changes in an economy. It occurs due to the long run and deep seated changes in an economy. In the initial stages of development, domestic investment exceeds domestic savings and imports exceed export, as it happens in India since 1951. Listen, in the initial stages of development, in the initial stage of development, what happens? Domestic investment will be more than the domestic saving. At the same time, our import will be more than the export, because the development is at the initial stage. The same thing happened in India in 1951. We started our planning commission only in the year 1950, and that is the initial stages of our development. We have just made a plan during those period. So that period we can say it as a secular disequilibrium period. Next one, structural disequilibrium, structural changes in the economy may also cause balance of payment disequilibrium. Structural changes. What are those structural changes? Structural changes include development of alternative sources of supply, development of better substitutes, exhaustion of productive resources, or changes in transport routes and cost. So if any country, if it brings structural changes in the economy, then that country will experience a structural disequilibrium of BOP. So what are those structural changes means? Alternative sources of supply. Alternative source, not the same one, alternative source of supplying of goods. Development of better substitute, finding a substitute for a commodity. Exhaustion of productive resources, exhausting usage of more of productive resources, or bringing some changes in the transport routes and also the cost. So far we have seen the three types of disequilibrium: cyclical disequilibrium, secular disequilibrium, and structural disequilibrium. Causes for BOP disequilibrium. So previously we have seen the types, now we are going to see the cause. The following are the major causes producing disequilibrium in the balance of payment of a country. What are they? Cyclical fluctuation, structural changes, development expenditure, consumerism, demonstration effect, borrowing, technological backwardness, global politics. I will explain one by one. Cyclical fluctuation. Cyclical disequilibrium in different countries is caused by their cyclical fluctuations, their phases and magnitude. World trade shrinks during depression, while trade flourishes during prosperity. It keeps on changing. That is called as a cyclical fluctuation. One time it will be in the phase of peak, then it comes to the phase of recession, then it goes to the phase of trough, then it goes to the phase of recovery. That is called as a cyclical fluctuation. It keeps on changing. So what happens during that time? So world trade shrinks, that is comes down during the depression time, and it will flourish, come up during the prosperity time. This is called as a cyclical fluctuation. This is one of the causes for BOP disequilibrium. Next one, structural changes. Structural disequilibrium is caused by structural changes brought by huge development and investment program in the developing economies. If any country, if it brings a change in the investment and development program in the developing economy, then it is called as a structural changes. Such economies may have high propensity to import for want of capital for rapid industrialization, while export may not be boosted up to that extent. What they are trying to say is, here what happens, the export will be very less, whereas the import will be more, and that import also for the want of capital for rapid industrialization. So this is another cause for BOP disequilibrium. Development expenditure. Development disequilibrium is caused by rapid economic development which results in income and price effect. So this equilibrium is caused by rapid economic development which result in income and also the price effects. The less developed countries in the early stage of development are not self-sufficient. The less developed countries in the early stage of development are not self-sufficient. Yes, it is true. The same our India also experienced in the year 1951. Income, savings and investment or abysmally low, very low. They depend upon developed countries for import of commodities, capital and technology. So all the developing countries in the initial stage of development, they will be facing various problems. That is, in the early stage, they are not self-sufficient, their income, savings and investments are very low, and they depend upon other countries for import of commodities, capital and technology. Consumerism. Next cause, balance of payment position of a country is adversely affected by a huge increase in consumption. So BOP is adversely affected or proportional to huge increase in the consumption. This increases the need for import and decreases the capacity to export. So what happens? This increases the need for any country to go for import and thereby decreases the capacity to export. Next cause, demonstration effect. Deficit in the balance of payment or developing country is also caused by demonstration effect, which influences the people in underdeveloped countries to imitate Western styled goods. See the demonstration effect. Deficit in the balance of payment. That is, when will you get the deficit? When your exports are less when compared to the imports in the developing countries. It is also caused by another effect called demonstration effect. What it will do, it will influences the people in underdeveloped countries to imitate Western styled goods. They want to consume the Western style goods. This is also one of the reasons for balance of payment disequilibrium, that is demonstration effect. Borrowing. International borrowing and investment may cause a deficit in the balance of payment. International borrowing, when a country is borrowing from another country or IMF, it is called as the international borrowing and investment, may cause a deficit in the balance of payment naturally. When the international borrowing is heavy, a country's balance of payment will be adverse since it repays loans with interest. Any country, if it is borrowing more amount from the international agencies, that country's balance of payment will be disequilibrium because that country has to repay the loan with more interest. Technological backwardness. Due to technological backwardness, the people, that is Indians, are unable to use the energy available with them. As a result, they import huge petroleum products from foreign countries, increasing the trade deficit. Yes, naturally, India is technologically backward. Since we are backward, we are unable to use the energy which are available in our hand. We are unable to use it. So as a result, what we are doing? We import the huge petroleum products from foreign countries and increasing our trade deficit. Global politics. Another cause. The rich countries, for example USA, need to sell their weapons to promote their economy and generate employment. Hence, war between countries, for example Iran and Iraq, Pakistan and India, are stimulated. In order to win the wars, the poor countries are forced to buy the weapon from weapon-rich country using their export earnings and creating trade deficit. See this global politics. Global politics. The name itself suggests that one country is living at the backwardness of another country. The rich country, for example USA, the richest country in the world, need to sell their weapons. They produce lots and lots of weapons. See, in order to sell their weapons and in order to improve their economy, in order to generate their own employment opportunities, what they do, they will sell their weapons to the other developing countries. And they themselves will force the countries to indulge in the war. For example, the war that has taken place between Iran and Iraq, Pakistan and India. Only then these countries will buy the weapons from USA, and thereby it leads to the economic growth of USA. So in order to win the war, these poor countries are forced to buy the weapons from the weapon rich country, for example USA, using their export earnings and thereby creating trade deficit. Measures to correct BOP disequilibrium. Next topic. How can this BOP disequilibrium can be corrected? There are some measures. Yes, what are the measures? Measures to correct BOP disequilibrium: depreciation, devaluation, import control, export promotion, exchange control, production of import substitutes, monetary policy, capital, import. So there are a number of measures available for correcting the balance of payment disequilibrium. They are broadly divided into two groups: automatic correction and deliberate measures. First correction is automatic correction. If the market forces of demand and supply are allowed to play freely, equilibrium will be automatically restored in course of time. So automatically correction takes place when, if the market forces of demand and supply are allowed to play freely, then equilibrium will be automatically restored, that is come back to its normal position in course of time. So this automatic correction can be done in four methods. For adjustment: first one, price adjustment; second, interest rate adjustment; third, income adjustment; fourth, capital flows. Let us see the first one, price adjustment. As a result of foreign exchange outflow, from a deficit country to a surplus country, what will happen? There will be a fall in the money supply in the deficit country and increase in the money supply in the surplus country. So take two countries into account, deficit country and a surplus country. When a foreign exchange outflow flow from a deficit country to a surplus country, what will happen to the money supply? There will be a fall in the money supply in the deficit country and there will be increase in the money supply in the surplus country. This will result in rise in the price in the surplus country, which will encourage import and discourage export. So if this condition arises, what will happen? The prices in the surplus country, which will encourage import and discourage the export due to the rise in the prices. Fall in prices in the deficit country will encourage export and discourage the imports, leading to the restoration of BOP equilibrium. Yes, I'll explain once again. Price adjustment. As a result of foreign exchange outflow from a deficit country where there is shortage, from a deficit country to a surplus country, then there will be a fall in the money supply where in the deficit country, and there will be increase in the money supply where in the surplus country. So this will leads to what? Rise in price in the surplus country. So this makes the surplus country to encourage import and discourage export. So fall in price will take place in the deficit country And what will happen here? This fall in price will encourage export and discourage import, which leads to a restoration, bringing back of the balance of payment equilibrium. Next adjustment, interest rate adjustment. The contraction or expansion of money supply which is taking place from the BOP deficit or surplus leads to a rise or fall in the interest rate. So based on the contraction or expansion of money supply which is taking place because of the deficit or surplus will leads to rise or fall in the interest rate. A rise in the interest rate in the deficit country will encourage investors to withdraw their funds from abroad and invest in their home country. Since the countries have to pay a large amount of interest for the money they are borrowing or the money they are investing, what the deficit countries will do means they will withdraw their funds from the abroad and start to invest in their own country. The opposite happens in the surplus country. What the surplus country will do? Instead of investing in their own country, they will come to other countries and invest. Next adjustment is income adjustment. A nation, that is a country with the payments surplus will experience rising income which will increase import. Therefore, equilibrium is restored in balance of payment. Also, a nation with payment is surplus will experience rising income. More income will be coming to the country which will increase the import. So, therefore, equilibrium will be restored in balance of payment. Capital flow, another automatic correction. Changes in the interest rate consequent to the BOP disequilibrium will encourage capital flow from the surplus nation to a deficit nation. Changes in the interest rate consequent to the BOP disequilibrium will encourage the fund flow, money flow from the surplus nation to the deficit nation, helping to restore of the BOP disequilibrium. So all these are automatic corrections of the BOP disequilibrium, that is price adjustment, interest rate adjustment, income adjustment and capital flows. We have seen the automatic correction of the BOP disequilibrium. Let us now see the deliberate measures that has to be taken in order to correct the BOP disequilibrium. So these corrections can be grouped into three: monetary measures, trade measures and miscellaneous measures. What is this monetary measures? Monetary contraction. High domestic price level is responsible for high imports and low exports. High domestic price level is responsible for high import and low exports. In order to control inflation, what do you mean by inflation? Rise in prices. So in order to control inflation, the Central Monetary Authority controls credit. As a result, the prices come down and exports increases. See the second point. So in order to control the inflation, the Central Monetary Authority controls the credit. So the prices automatically comes down and exports increase. This will help to correct adverse balance of payment. However, if credit is controlled, investment will decline, production will go down, prices will increase. This is the cause of confusion between government and RBI in India in 2010s. See the last point, if credit is controlled, what will happen to the investment? Investment will decline. If investment decline, production will go down. If production goes down, prices will increase. So this is a great confusion which is taking place or which took place between Indian government or RBI in 2010s. Next measure is devaluation. Devaluation means deliberate reduction of the official rate at which domestic currency is exchanged for another currency. What is devaluation? Devaluation means deliberate reduction in the value of money, the official rate at which our domestic currency is exchanged for another currency. In other words, devaluation refers to a reduction in the external value of a currency in the terms of other currency. For example, instead of 70 rupees per US dollar, making 80 rupees per US dollar. Before, $1 is equal to 70 rupees. After demonetization, 1 US dollar is equal to rupees 80 of Indian currency. Devaluation makes countries' exports cheaper and imports dearer. That means making Indian goods cheaper for foreigner and foreign goods costlier for Indians. So after devaluation, export will be easy for India and import will be dearer. That is making Indian goods cheaper for foreigners. Indian goods are cheaper for foreigners, whereas foreign goods are very costly for Indians. See the chart given there. Devaluation of Indian currency. Indian rupee was devalued 3 times since 1947. From 1947, first is on 29 September 1949, on 6 June 1966, on 1st July 1991. Next monetary measure, exchange control. Exchange control means the state intervention in the forex market. Forex, foreign exchange, Forex, foreign exchange. So exchange control means the intervention of state in the foreign exchange market. It is a popular method employed to influence the balance of payments position of a country. It is a popular method which was employed to influence the balance of payment position in a country, that is balance of payment disequilibrium. Under exchange control, the government or central bank assumes complete control over the foreign exchange reserves and earning of the country. So under this exchange control, what happens? The government or the central bank assumes or take over complete control over the foreign exchange reserves and also the earnings of the country. The recipients of foreign exchange, like exporters, are required to surrender foreign exchange to the government or to central bank in exchange for domestic currency. The recipients of foreign exchange, like exporters, are required to surrender their foreign exchange to the government or central bank. What for? In exchange for domestic currency. By virtue of its control over the issue of foreign exchange, the government can control the import. To control over the issue of foreign exchange, the government can control over the imports. Too much of import control, too much of imports control would invite more and more smuggled goods. If a government passes a laws and control the imports, what will happen? More smuggling will take place inside the country. smuggling of gold into Indian airports regularly happens as per the report in the media. I hope you know what I mean by smuggling. Bringing in the commodity without the knowledge of or without the permission of the government. In Tamil we will be saying it as a kallakadathal. Understood? Yes. Next is the trade measures. So trade measures include measures to promote export and to reduce import. So trade measures includes measures that have been taken in order to promote export, improve the export and to reduce the import. So what are the steps taken in order to promote the export? Exports may be encouraged by reducing or abolishing export duties. So if a government reduces its export duties, more goods can be exported. Next, to provide export subsidy. Next, encouraging export production by giving monetary, fiscal, physical and institutional incentives. So exports can be promoted by reducing the export duties, providing export subsidy and encouraging export production by giving various incentives like monetary, fiscal, physical and institutional. Next is import control. Imports may be controlled by imposing or enhancing import duties, that is levying more import duties, restricting imports through import quotas, fixing the quotas, that is certain amount of goods only has to be imported. Next, licensing and even prohibiting altogether the import of certain non-essential items. Licensing and even prohibiting altogether the import of certain non-essential items, not permitting the non-essential items to get into the country. But this would encourage smuggling. If the country does all these measures for export promotions and import control, naturally it will lead to smuggling. In addition to the measures mentioned, that is export promotion, import control, there are a number of other measures that can help or make the balance of payment position more favorable. The various measures are foreign loans, encouraging foreign investment in the home country, development of tourism to attract foreign tourists, providing incentives to enhance inward remittance, income of the coming in of the money, and last, import substitution. So other important miscellaneous measures apart from the export promotion and import control, what are they? Foreign loans, encouraging foreign investment in the home country, encouraging foreign investment in the home country, development of tourism to attract foreign tourists, next providing incentives to enhance inward remittances, that is money getting in of the country, and last one, import substitution. Instead of importing such particular goods, what are the other substitute goods that can be produced in our own country itself? Next topic, exchange rate. Meaning of foreign exchange, F-O-R-E-X, forex. Forex refers to foreign currency. The mechanism through which payments are effected between two countries having different currency system is called forex system. The mechanism through which payments are transacted between two countries having different currency system is called forex system. Definition of forex. What's the meaning of, or what's the definition for forex? Forex is the system or process of converting one national currency into another and of transferring money from one country to another. So forex is the system or process of converting one national currency into another and of transferring money from one country to another. This is the definition of forex. Next, rate of exchange. The transactions in the exchange market are carried out at exchange rates. The transactions between countries in the exchange market are carried out at exchange rates. It is the external value of the domestic currency. External value of domestic currency. Thus, exchange rate may be defined as the price paid in the home currency for a unit of foreign currency. So it can be quoted in two ways. One way is 1 unit of foreign money, that is 1 US dollar, to so many units of domestic currency, that is rupees. 1 unit of dollar to many unit of rupee, or a certain number of units of foreign currency to 1 unit of domestic money, that is certain number of units of rupees to a 1 unit of dollar. See the chart nearby. So in 1947, 1 rupee is equal to $1, and in 2018, 70 rupees is equal to $1. See the exchange rate definition: the rate at which one country's currency can be traded for another country's currency. That rate is called as the exchange rate. Definition of equilibrium exchange rate. So according to the economist Ragnar Nurks, he says the equilibrium exchange rate is that rate which over a certain period of time keeps the balance of payment in equilibrium. The equilibrium exchange rate is nothing but a type of rate, or is the rate which over a certain period of time, over a given duration of time or over a given span of time, keeps the balance of payment in equilibrium. Determination of equilibrium exchange rate. Determination. How will you determine equilibrium exchange rate? See the theory. The equilibrium rate of exchange is determined in the foreign exchange market in accordance with the general theory of value, that is by the intersection of the interaction of the forces of demand and supply. So the equilibrium rate of exchange is determined in the foreign exchange market in accordance with the general theory of value, that is by the interaction of the forces of demand and supply. Thus, the rate of exchange is determined at the point where demand for forex is equal to the supply of forex. The point where the demand and supply intersects determines the rate of exchange. See the diagram given there. So in the above diagram, y-axis represents exchange rate, that is value of rupee in terms of dollar. Y-axis represents exchange rate, that is value of rupee in the terms of dollar. X-axis represent demand and supply of forex. So understood? Y-axis represent exchange rate, that's nothing but value of rupee in terms of dollar. X-axis represent demand and supply of forex. See the point there, E. E is the point of equilibrium where DD intersects SS. Can you see the curve DD there? Demand curve intersects the SS curve, supply curve at a point E. So at that point the exchange rate is P2. See along the y-axis, can you see P2 point there? So the demand and supply is meeting at the or attaining equilibrium at the point E, where the exchange rate is P2. Let us now see the next topic, types of exchange rate systems. So there are two major exchange rate systems, namely fixed exchange rate system and flexible, that is changing, floating exchange rate system. Fixed exchange rate system is also called as a pegged exchange rate system. What do you mean by fixed exchange rate and what is flexible exchange rate? Fixed exchange rate, countries following the fixed exchange rate system agree to keep their currencies at a fixed rate as determined by the government. So exchange rate is fixed in the fixed exchange rate system. Whereas in flexible exchange rate system, exchange rates are freely determined in an open market by market forces of demand and supply. Here the government do not determine it. Here under the flexible exchange rate system, exchange rates are freely determined in an open market based on the two market forces of demand and supply. So the demand and supply will fix the exchange rate in the flexible exchange rate system. Types of exchange rates. Exchange rates are also in the form of nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate, nominal effective exchange rate, real effective exchange rate. So these are the four types of exchange rates. See the side, next side. If $1 is equal to rupees 75, if $1 is equal to 75 rupees, then its nominal exchange rate is equal to 75 divided by 1. 75 rupees divided by $1 is equal to 75. And its real exchange rate is equal to 75 into 5 divided by 50, which is equal to 7.5. This is an example or calculation given for if a pen cost rupees 50 in India and it cost $5 in the US. That's what they given. The real exchange rate is 75 into 5 divided by 50. 75 Indian rupee, 5 that US dollar, 50 the cost of pen in India. And near and rear are not explained here, so you need not learn that. Next topic, determinants of exchange rates. Exchange rates are determined by numerous factors, number of factors, and they are related to the trading relationship between two countries. Let us see what are the determinants. Differentials in inflation, differential in interest rates, current account deficits, public debt, terms of trade, political and economic stability, recession, and speculation. Let us see one by one the determinants of exchange rates. Determinants of exchange rate. First determinant, differentials in inflation. So any country with a lower inflation rate exhibits a rising currency value. Why? As its purchasing power increases relative to other currencies. Second determinant, differentials in interest rates. There is a high degree of correlation between interest rate, inflation, and exchange rate. There is a high degree of correlation between these three: interest rate, inflation, and also the exchange rate. Higher interest rates attract foreign capital and cause the exchange rate to rise, and vice versa. Higher interest rate attract foreign capital and cause the exchange rate to rise, and vice versa. That is, if lower interest rate do not attract the foreign capital. Next determinant, current account deficits. The country resort to borrowing capital from foreign resources to make up the deficit. So any country, in order to make up the deficit, will borrow money from the foreign sources. Excess demand for foreign currency lowers a country's exchange rate. Excess demand for foreign currency, what will do? Will lower a country's exchange rate. Next is a public debt. Large public debt are driving out foreign investors because it leads to inflation. As a result, exchange rate will be lower. More public debts. I hope you know what I mean by public debt. Borrowing money from the foreign sources in order to meet our development process. So these large public debts are driving out our foreign investors, not allowing our foreign investors, because it leads to inflation. So as a result, what happens? Exchange rate will be lower. Next determinant, terms of trade. If the price of a country's export rises by a greater rate than that of its import, its terms of trade will improve. See, if the price of a country's export rises to a greater rate than that of the import, then the terms of trade will improve. Favorable terms of trade says that greater demand for the country's export, and thus BOP becomes favorable. Next one, political and economic stability. Political and economic stability. If a nation's political climate is stable and economic performance is good, its currency value will be appreciated by attracting more foreign capital. Yes, it's a very, very important determinant, political and economic stability. If a nation's political climate is stable, there is not much change in the political situation, and economic performance also is good, then foreigners will come forward automatically to come and invest in India. Next one, recession. It is one of the phases, business phase. So interest rates are low during the recession phase. This will decrease the inflow of foreign capital. When the interest rates are low, flow from foreign capital will be less. They will not be in a position to give or supply money for India. As a result, a currency will be depreciated against other currencies, thereby lowering the exchange rate. So interest rates are low during the recession phase. So this less interest rate will decrease the inflow of foreign capital. Because of these two, currency will be depreciated against other currencies, thereby the exchange rate also will be getting lowered. Next one, last one, speculation. If a country's currency value is expected to rise, investors will demand more of that currency in order to make a profit in the near future. This results in appreciation of the exchange rate. So when foreign countries comes to know that if India's country currency value is expected to rise, then they will be coming forward, demand more that of the currency in order to make a profit in the near future. So this results in the appreciation of the exchange rate. So these are all the determinants of the exchange rates. Next very important topic, foreign direct investment FDI and trade. Foreign trade and foreign direct investment are closely related. In developing countries like India, FDI in the natural resource sector, including plantations, increases trade volume. So in developing countries like India, FDI plays a very vital role and it helps to increase the trade volume. Foreign production by FDI is useful to substitute foreign trade. FDI is also influenced by the income generated from the trade and regional integration schemes. So it is also influenced by the income generated from the trade and regional integration schemes. FDI is helpful to accelerate the economic growth. FDI is very much helpful to accelerate, that is to develop our economic growth by facilitating essential import needed for carrying out development program. So this FDI is very much useful for the development of developing countries like India. FDI is encouraged by the factors such as foreign exchange shortage, desire to create employment, and acceleration of the pace of economic development. Many developing countries strongly prefer foreign investment to imports. So this FDI is encouraged by various factors such as foreign exchange shortage, desire to create employment, and acceleration of the pace of economic development. So most of the developing countries prefer this FDI to imports. Meaning of FDI, meaning of foreign direct investment. So FDI means an investment in a foreign country, that involves some degree of control and participation in management. It corresponds to the investment made by the multinational enterprise in a foreign country. It is different from portfolio investment, which is primarily motivated by short-term profit and it does not seek management control. So FDI means an investment in a foreign country that involves certain degree of control and participation in the management. It corresponds to the investment made by MNC, multinational enterprise in a foreign country. It is different from portfolio investment. What is meant by portfolio investment? It refers to investments made in securities and other financial assets issued in another country. That's called as a portfolio investment. But it differs from FDI, which is primarily motivated by short-term profit and it does not seek any management control, whereas FDI seek management control. Objectives of FDI. FDI has 4 objectives: sales expansion, acquisition of resources, diversification, minimization of competitive risk. Sales expansion, expand the selling. Acquisition of resources, usage of more resources. Diversified, not looking into the only one units but diversification. Minimization of competitive risk. These are all the objectives of FDI. What are all the advantages of FDI? So the important advantages are: FDI may help to increase the investment level, the income and the employment in the host country. So this FDI will increase the investment, income and also the employment in the host country from where it is invested, FDI. It facilitates transfer of technology to the recipient country. Technology is being transferred from one country to the recipient country, host country to recipient country. FDI may also bring revenue to the government of host country. A part of profit from direct foreign investment may be taken back for the use of expansion, modernization, or development of related industries. It may kindle a managerial revolution in the recipient country through professional management and sophisticated management techniques. It may kindle a managerial revolution. It will bring in a managerial revolution in the recipient country through professional management and sophisticated management techniques. Foreign capital may enable the country to increase its export and reduce import requirements. Foreign investment may also help increase competition and break domestic monopolies. Foreign investment also help to increase competition and break down the domestic monopolies. I hope you know who are called as a monopoly. Single sellers, they are called as a monopoly. If FDI adds more value to output in the recipient country than the return on capital from foreign investment, FDI may help in filling the savings gap and the foreign exchange gap in order to achieve the goal of national economic development. So, in order to achieve the goal of national economic development, FDI will fill the savings gap and the foreign exchange gap. Foreign investments may stimulate domestic enterprise to invest in ancillary industries in collaboration with the foreign enterprise. So, foreign investment, this FDI helps to stimulate, start domestic enterprise, local business, local industry to invest in ancillary industries in collaboration with foreign enterprises. FDI also encourages its entrepreneurs to invest in the other less developing countries, LDCs. Firms in India have started investing in Nepal, Uganda, Ethiopia and Kenya and other LDCs. Disadvantages of FDI. So we have seen the advantages so far. Let us see what are the disadvantages of this FDI. Private foreign capital tends to flow to the high profit areas rather than to the priority sectors. So private foreign capital tends to flow to the high profit rather than to the priority sector. To whichever sector we have to given priority, we cannot do it, but it will be tend to flow to the higher profit areas. The technologies brought in by the foreign investor may not be appropriate to the consumption needs, size of the domestic market, resource availabilities, stage of development of the economy, etc. Foreign technologies may not suit to the local technologies. Local availability of resources. Foreign investment sometimes have unfavorable effect on the balance of payment of a country because when the drain of foreign exchange by way of royalty, dividend, etc. is more than the investment made by the foreign concerns. Foreign investment sometimes have unfavorable effect also on the balance of payment of a country. Why? Because when the drain of foreign exchange is being drained in the form of royalty, dividend, etc. is more than the investment made by the foreign concerns. Foreign capital sometimes interferes in the national policies. Yes, foreign capital sometimes interferes in our national policies. Foreign investors sometimes engage in unfair and unethical trade practices. Foreign investors sometimes engage in unfair, not moral, and unethical trade practices, not good. Foreign investment in some cases leads to the destruction of, weakening of small and medium local enterprises or domestic enterprises. Sometimes foreign investment can result in the dangerous situation in the creation of monopolies or oligopolistic structure. Foreign investment result in dangerous situation of the creation of monopoly. They themselves became a single sellers. There are several costs associated with encouraging the foreign investment. FDI in India. The early 1990s witnessed reforms in the economic policies. Yes, the government of India introduced a new economic policy for the economic development. This helped to open up Indian markets to FDI. So our Indians invited the foreigners to come and invest in India after the introduction of the policy of 1990. FDI in India has increased over the years. In India, FDI has been advantageous in terms of free flow of capital, improved technology, management expertise, and access to international market. Yes, definitely this FDI has have helped India. How? In terms of free flow of capital, continuous flow of foreign capital, improved technology, management expertise, and access to international markets. The major sectors benefited from FDI in India are, which are the sectors are highly benefited because of this FDI? Financial sector, that is both banking and non-banking, insurance, telecommunication, hospitality and tourism, pharmaceuticals, software and information technology. So all these sectors are highly benefited from FDI in India. FDI is not permitted to the industrial sectors like. So India didn't permit this FDI in certain sectors. What are those sectors? Arms and ammunition, atomic energy, railways, coal and lignite, mining of iron, manganese, chrome, gypsum, sulfur, gold, diamond, copper, etc. So in all these areas, FDI is not permitted. FDI inflow in India has increased from $97 million in 1990-91 to $5,535 million in 2004 to 2005. Such a drastic improvement. It amounted to $32,955 million in 2011 and 2012. It has been increased further in 2011 and 2012, accounting to nearly $32,955 million. World Investment Report 2018 reveals that FDI to India declined to $40 billion in 2017 from $44 billion in 2016. Yes, we have come to the conclusion. So international economics deals with how trade benefits the nation. We have seen several theories propounded on cause of international trade, starting from Adam Smith, Ricardo, etc. The gains from trade, terms of trade, balance of payment constitute the major areas of discussion. We have discussed all those. The exchange rate, fixed or flexible, the major factors determining the economic strength of the nation, all this we have discussed. In the line of foreign trade and foreign capital, foreign investment, FDI, how FDI plays a major role in the determining economic development of less developed countries and developing countries. International trade has helped the economically developed countries largely and disappointed many African and Asian countries. So all these concepts we have seen in detail. I hope you have understood all the concepts very clearly. Thank you students. See you in next chapter.